Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street in Corning. We have, needless to say, a lot to talk about this morning as the impeachment inquiry has been opened by Speaker McCarthy. We're going to take a look at that, what both sides had to say. Hopefully, we can get to a couple other issues as well later on in the program, and I'm going to put my contact information up as I highlight this. We'll be talking with Charles and Shannon. They're with Culligan Water. You notice the Culligan Water jug in the background during interviews. That's probably not cooler. That's the word I was looking for. And we're going to talk to them about Culligan Water and thank them for being a part of the program. So if you have any questions, well, for them, for me, you'd just like to weigh in on your thoughts about the impeachment inquiry, there's a lot of interesting information coming out about this. Obviously, you've got the infighting in the Republican Party. You've got the White House, which I hope to really dive in deep with, sending out a letter to media outlets saying, really start scrutinizing Republicans. Again, they have no problem putting this pressure on the media, and the media seems fine with it. Social media and media in general seem fine with being told what to do, even though they're very rarely allowed to ask questions of the president. The president, of course, handpicks, or his people handpick who gets to ask him a question, and very often knowing what the question is ahead of time. So, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy yesterday announces he is directing a trio of House committees to open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. This coming from Axios. Now, this is a unilateral move, and it's a reversal of what McCarthy said he would do in the past when he said that a House vote would be held to launch such a probe. And that really seems to be what the media's focused in on, that he kind of flipped on that a little bit. It's an escalation of the House Oversight and Judiciary Committee investigation into the business dealing of Biden's son, Hunter. So, launching a formal probe gives Republicans added subpoena powers. And it's interesting because people keep saying, we got a virtual wave already. Thank you. What's interesting is that you'll see a lot of talking heads say, well, nothing's been proven. There's been no connection made. But isn't that the whole point for this inquiry, is so that you have that subpoena power? Because there's a lot of questions. And again, I hope I can get to it. But the New York Post put together maybe, I don't know how many were there, but kind of a top 10 of what we need to discuss and what we need to find out with this inquiry. Now, McCarthy said it was the next logical step in this process and that will, quote, give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. Now, those spearheading this initiative and this inquiry is Oversight Chair James Comer, Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan, and Ways and Means Committee Chair Jason Smith. Now, a lot of people are questioning whether or not House Republicans will have the 218 votes needed to impeach the president, and some Republicans in both the House and the Senate are on record saying they don't think there's enough evidence to proceed. Well, again, isn't it about getting some of that information with the subpoena powers? There's already been, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's already been some smoke. I think one of the biggest questions that the media won't cover, but I think is really fascinating, are the aliases, the fake names used in these emails. What could that, and that's emails when Biden was then vice president, what could that lead to? These are questions that need to be asked, and without this subpoena power, we won't get that information. Now, how long will this take? There are no rules on how long an impeachment inquiry can or must last. The probe into Biden could last as short as a few months or as long as a year, and this according to a news outlet. I don't see the website address there, but the probe into Biden could last, as like I said, a few months or as long as a year, depending on what McCarthy and Republican leadership believe is the right time to conclude or move to articles of impeachment. The only real deadline you would have would be the end of this Congress, which would be January 2nd, 2025. So, when we come back, I'm going to read the statement from Congressman Nick Langworthy. He released a statement on the impeachment inquiry. That's when we come back. And as I said a little bit later on, we'll be talking with Charles and Shannon from Culligan Water. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for joining us. I am your host, Frank Hakem. So I mentioned the Congressman Nick Langworthy of the 23rd Congressional District released a statement on the impeachment inquiry, and I wanted to bring that to your attention. Here's what he had to say. Our work on the House Oversight Committee produced evidence that President Biden continually lied to the American people about his involvement in his family's shady business dealings. We've uncovered millions in foreign money to various Biden family members, and we know President Biden was involved in meetings with Hunter's foreign business ties. I applaud Speaker McCarthy for initiating the logical next step to use the full power of the House to bring answers to the American people, and I look forward to working with my colleagues on the Oversight Committee under the exceptional leadership of Chairman Comer to bring transparency and accountability to this administration. So that's a statement from Congressman Nick Langworthy released yesterday. I wanted to pass that along to you because obviously our local congressman, we're going to try to get him on the program again. He's been great. They want to be on the program. We've just been so busy lately. And now that Labor Day is over, the political season is kicking off. So let's take a break because our guests are here. We'll get them all settled in. Yeah. Okay. So we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, we were talking about it all morning long. Our guests are in the studio. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you for having us.
I've got to say right off the jump here, I think the reason that my guests return so frequently is because we have Culligan's Water in the background. So I appreciate that. They always have great water. So tell us a little bit. Well, let's start with this. How about you introduce yourselves and tell us what you do at Culligan's?
I'm Charlie Brunza. I'm the general manager of Culligan Water in Elmira.
Okay.
I'm Shannon Storms. I'm household sales at Culligan.
Okay. Where is Culligan located? We see the water jugs and water coolers everywhere, but where's it actually located out of?
We're at 465 East Water Street in Elmira.
Oh, okay. So simple. How long has Culligan's been in our area?
Culligan Water's been in the area since the early 80s, 1982, 1983, somewhere in that time.
Wow. It's kind of become just so synonymous with like working environment like that. So that's very interesting. It's just since 82. Have you been there the whole time?
No, I've only been there since September last year.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I'm new.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So what kind of services do you offer? Because I know, again, I keep bringing up the water cooler, but there's so much more that you have to offer.
We do everything from household water treatment to commercial water treatment to bottle-free coolers for your home and business.
Oh, wow.
To the bottled water.
Do you find that a lot of people have them in their homes now?
Yes.
That's got to be very convenient.
That's a very big, big trend going.
I'm sure part of the market. And that you get delivery to your home as well.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. What kind of products do you have? What are your most popular products? I mean, I just mentioned in-home, but there's got to be a lot of products that we're just not aware of.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Basically, the water softening is a huge part of our business.
Okay.
And then bottle-free coolers is another huge part of our business.
Okay.
People are getting away from lugging the bottles, and so they go to the bottle-free coolers, and that's a great option.
How does that work, the bottle-free cooler? I'm just not familiar.
It basically hooks into a water source that's in your home or business and feeds directly into the cooler instead of having bottles for you.
Oh, what a great idea. What do they think of next? That's amazing. Why would, a lot of people are tuning in, and I can't praise Culligan Water enough, but what would you say to viewers if they're thinking about choosing Culligan?
Well, I would say one of the biggest things that we do is we offer, a safe source of water, and water is one of the most essential products that a person needs.
Right. And you see it now. Everybody's always carrying around the reusable bottles for their water. Right. So people seem to be headed in that direction. So that's why I find it interesting that not only can you have it right directly in your home now, you have it at the working world. So really, Culligan is perfect for any place.
Yes, absolutely.
What, for those that aren't familiar with this, and I'm not, I'm going to be 100% honest, what does Culligan's 100% satisfaction guarantee mean?
Basically, if we ever do or put in any equipment that the customer's not 100% satisfied with, you get your money back or you don't get charged, period.
No kidding. But so that goes to show that you do back up what you say at Culligan Water.
Yes, absolutely.
And I know that you have great, what's the word I'm looking for? Great relationships with your customers, right? I mean, you guys are really, from beginning to end, make sure that they're satisfied.
Yes, that's a very big part of
Yeah.
what we're after. Our business is to get that customer satisfaction.
And that's what makes, I think, you guys so special. And not to just keep tooting your horn here, but that's why I think you have become synonymous with our area, and so many people use Culligan Water. Wouldn't you say?
Exactly.
Because you guys back it
That's what we
up.
strive for.
I know, right? I mean, I've never heard a bad word. What should someone consider before buying a water treatment solution?
Basically, just the size and scope of your project.
Okay.
And getting your water tested properly. That's where we come in and we test the water, look at the sites, and give you options and solutions that you may pick from.
So before we go, you mentioned that you're local, obviously. Where can people find out more? Because there are so many options. Where's the best place to go?
They can call the store or they can go to culliganwater.com and find us online.
Okay, great. Well, guys, thanks so much for being on the program. I'm thirsty now. I'll get you water. Thanks for being on the show. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thanks so much for joining us. And thank you to our guests. Let me turn down that music a little bit. To our guests, Charles and Shannon. That was fun. Obviously, we've had Culligan as a part of this program from the very beginning, and we really appreciate them providing all the water for our guests. I was joking, but I think that is one of the reasons why everybody keeps coming back. So I really appreciate it. Okay, let's get back into it. We're going to talk about the impeachment inquiry. Stephen Collinson, who I mentioned quite a bit on this program, he's from CNN, and he says it's the most predictable impeachment investigation in American history. Most predictable. He says McCarthy argued that the impeachment inquiry was the, quote, next logical step amid Republican claims. Now, here's why I bring up this article. It's a lengthy piece, it's 5 pages, but just for this one takeaway. Quote, the next logical step amid Republican claims, so far unproven, that Biden was enriched by his son Hunter's business ventures when he was vice president. Isn't that the whole point? So far. I mean, I guess that's what I'm missing in the negative criticism coming from the media, because as is the case, and I think it was Michael Goodwin that had it this morning from the New York Post, that said, you knew that the media was going to act outraged over this. And it's hard, in my opinion, to accept their outrage after how many, impeachment threats and inquiries, et cetera, were thrown around under the Trump administration. So to me, to now almost fake this outrage, and I'm not going to say it wasn't a bit predictable. I don't think he's wrong on that point. I mean, I think it was only a matter of time. It wasn't if, it was when. So that's not really the point here. It is so far unproven, which is the whole reason they're having the inquiry. So that they now have subpoena power to get to the bottom of it. And that's, what, I was going to save this, but I think it's worth starting off kind of our discussion on this topic with what the New York Post has put together, Stephen Nelson specifically, about the major questions that will be pursued by congressional Republicans in this inquiry. And this is the one that I'm the most curious about, or I think needs to be investigated thoroughly, which is what is in Joe Biden's vice presidential emails. So far, we know of a couple of aliases that he used in these emails, like Robert L. Peters and Robin Ware, to communicate with staff members, leaving a paper trail of nearly 5,400 written records. But how many other names are we maybe not aware of? And what were in those emails? A search needs to be done. The House Oversight Committee demanded these communications from the National Archive with an August 31st deadline, but they have not complied. That is what the New York Post is being told. So far have not complied. Biden used the official account robert.l.peters@pci.gov, as well as private email accounts registered to fake names. And this is not rare either. Obama used to do this as well. And you might say, why? I know, that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of with this. A president's own words can be especially damning during impeachment inquiries. If you look at Richard Nixon, for example, resigned, you know all that. Okay, so the next question. What do Hunter Biden's bank records show? Another very fair question here. Are there tapes backing up a $10 million Burisma bribe allegation? That has been one of the sticking points. Again, you can find in more detail the names, the events at the New York Post. We just do not have time for all of it. But if you recall, when asked about this, President Biden said, where's the money? Well, isn't that the question? It is unclear where the money is. Let's get to the bottom of it and see if there is an issue. Next, who did Hunter call in D.C. with Burisma partners in December of 2015? We're going to read through these quickly because I don't want to get too wonky into the weeds on this. Why did U.S. policy shift towards Shokin? And that's another very important point that raises a lot of red flags for a lot of people. Next, I'm not going to say finally because there's a few more. Why did Joe Biden meet with Hunter's Chinese business partners on a 2013 trip to Beijing? Another fair question. What happened to Hunter's 10% stake in a Chinese investment fund? What, and you know, isn't it funny with all these questions when we talk about 10% stake and we talk about money and how much money Hunter has, et cetera, and put aside everything political. Put aside everything, and whether you like Biden, you don't like Biden, and you like Trump, you don't like Biden. Put all that to the side. What were his qualifications for any of this? And I know you can say, well, you know, politicians' kids have always got these great offers that you and I want to get. Yeah, okay. But isn't it a fair question to ask? What are his qualifications? But I will continue. Why did Joe Biden dine twice with Hunter's Ukrainian, Russian, and Kazakhstan? I knew I was going to screw it up. Business partners. You get the point. What happened to Butirana's $3.5 million, and how has she escaped Biden's sanctions? What about the big guy references? Another fair question, because very often there's talk in these emails or conversations about a kickback to the big guy, many speculating that the big guy, of course, being Joe Biden in this scenario. Did Hunter talk to his dad after meeting a Romanian client? Was Joe Biden present for Hunter's Chinese shakedown? And this is one that is probably, I'm not going to say the least important in all of this, but something that I think would be very, very telling in everything regarding this inquiry. Who paid for Hunter Biden's art? Many people looked at that as a way to, almost out in the open, try to get favor with the White House. Hunter Biden sold at least $1.3 million in what could only be described as novice artwork since his father took office. After Manhattan gallerist George Burgess refused House Oversight Committee demands for a list of buyers, citing influence peddling and money laundering concerns. And that would be two major concerns in the art dealing. Influence peddling, because they are novice artwork. So why would you be paying that kind of money for, I'm sure, art that you could buy better elsewhere for cheaper? So why? Unless you thought you were going to get some inside track in the White House. And then they said also here money laundering concerns. An unknown buyer bought 11 pieces of artwork for a total of $875,000. That's what Business Insider reported at the time. Who was buying 11 pieces of artwork of Hunter Biden's quote-unquote artwork? So that was a quick I guess, review of some of the questions that the inquiry is attempting to get to the bottom of. And that's why I believe the inquiry was so important to begin. I don't know the timing. I know there's some criticism there. We're going to take a look at that. We're going to hear from the left and the right on this. But I mentioned, and good, I do have time. So I think this is another part that's very troubling. And I don't know if this is a signal that the White House is nervous or if they know that they have this kind of power over the media. I think those are both very fair questions. The White House is going to send a letter to news executives urging outlets to ramp up scrutiny of GOP's Biden impeachment inquiry that they say is based on lies. Okay. The White House plans to send a letter to top U.S. news executives on Wednesday, urging them to intensify their scrutiny of House Republicans after Speaker Kevin McCarthy launched an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden, despite having, and they, again, the media is already compliant in this because, again, the next part of that sentence is, despite having found no evidence of a crime. Anyway. They do this again later on this piece. It's so, if it wasn't so frustrating, it would be kind of beautiful, and how much you see the kowtowing to a Democrat White House by the media. I mean, the media should be outraged. They used to do this under Obama as well. They'd be outraged about once a quarter, and they say, why are we not getting more press coverage or media availabilities? Why are we not allowed to ask more questions? And, you know, they'd write a letter, and nothing would be done, and they'd still give the same kind of glowing articles and interviews that they did in the past. Continuing, though, quote, it's time for the media to ramp up its scrutiny of House Republicans for opening an impeachment inquiry based on lies, said Ian Sams, a spokesperson for the White House counsel's office. So this gentleman, Mr. Sams, believes, I'll ask you the question, I don't know if you like Biden, you don't like Biden. Do you believe the media doesn't scrutinize House Republicans? I mean, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the coverage since this inquiry was announced. I would not say there's been too many glowing reviews by the media of House Republicans. So that's how, I guess you could say, thin-skinned the White House is. I mean, it's very similar to when Joe Biden's asked not even a tough question, asked a sometimes softball question, and he gets so mad. He'll get confrontational because they're not used to it. That's what happens when you're surrounded by yes men, in this scenario, the media being the yes men. So when you're surrounded by that and something gets a little bit off kilter, just a little bit maybe more in depth of a question, or a question you're just not getting on repeat all the time, and you don't know how to handle it. It's not supposed to go that way in your mind. And that's what Ian Sams is essentially saying to all the media and to all of us, that even though there has been plenty of scrutiny on House Republicans, it's not enough for them. Now, you would think because of their attempt at censoring social media, some of the things that they've done in the past in the White House regarding the media, you would think this would be a major concern for many people. And I will give CNN's Oliver Darcy credit, even though he does spin this a lot to try to defend the White House and try to attack Republicans, and just a kind of a hilarious irony about what this piece is about. But that's really the only place that I've seen this reported. The letter, which said an impeachment inquiry with no supporting evidence should quote, set off alarm bells for news organizations. Shouldn't this letter set off alarm bells for news organizations? It will be sent to executives helming the nation's largest news organizations. Just in full disclosure, I have not received a letter. I'll let you know if I do. But they're going to send to CNN, the New York Times, Fox News, and the Associated Press, CBS News, and others. Now let's go back to the spin later on in this piece to again defend the president and attack House Republicans in a beautiful bit of irony. While news organizations have published innumerable fact checks on the matter, they have also often failed to robustly call out the mis- and disinformation peddled by Republicans in their coverage, frustrating officials in the Biden White House who believe that the news media should be doing more to dispel lies that saturate the public discourse. That's an exact quote from Oliver Darcy's piece. Could we spend the rest of the show dissecting that one sentence? We could. I'm not going to do that, though. I'll save you that. When have there been all these fact checks? There has been on Republicans, but there hasn't been on, for heaven's sakes, CNN and others wouldn't report on the Hunter laptop story because they knew it would hurt Biden. So they made up this information that it could be Russian disinformation, or that it was a hack, or you remember it. So a lot of people, and that's what's kind of interesting about this piece when it goes back to the plea deal with Hunter. A lot of people weren't even aware of what was going on if you go to a CNN or an MSNBC or wherever. Not even aware that this was a story, you see? So they've now had to kind of backtrack and re-report on something they never reported on in the first place. That happens every once in a while, and it's kind of interesting to see how the media spins it to make it look like they've been there for the whole time. Because if you look at Jake Tapper even saying, we're reporting nonstop about this Hunter story. We're going to hold him accountable. But if you recall back in the day, he refused to report on the laptop because he said it was hacked or Russian disinformation. So they're saying they're not doing enough in the mainstream media to quote unquote fact check Republicans on mis and disinformation. Peddled, even notice the language that he uses, peddled by Republicans in their coverage. Frustrating officials in the White House who believe that the news media should be doing more to dispel lies. Again, this is Oliver Darcy's words, not the White House's, allegedly, that saturate the public discourse. When did the Hunter Biden story, specifically in reference to what connections Joe Biden had with it, when has that ever, quote unquote, saturated the public discourse? Yes, people started talking about it when they heard about the deal, but many people before that had no idea. It was not some saturation. It's not what we heard nonstop. I mean, you could take any little thing that the media deemed a scandal under the Trump administration, and they would latch on to it where you could say it was saturating the public discourse because the media covered it so much. You could not, in good faith, say that about the Hunter Biden story. So when we come back, and to that point, just real quick, there's a real back and forth with Representative Scott Perry and some reporters the other day. So he was asked by a UK Channel 4 Washington correspondent about basically Americans see no evidence was the gist of the question. Americans see no evidence for Biden's impeachment. And that's when Scott Perry responded, because you don't report on it. And there isn't. I mean, I cannot think of a place where you've even heard about the quote-unquote big guy, or you've heard about the alias emails. The only place that I recall is more conservative outlets. So to suggest, the White House to suggest they're not getting even special, I would say special treatment, but not getting fair treatment is really laughable at face value. So we're going to talk about how the media seems to be stepping up before the letter even was sent. They seem to already be playing the role and making sure to know that the White House, don't worry, we're going to do our job and doing as much as we can to protect you, just like we did during the original days of the laptop story. So we'll talk about that. I'll take a look. If anybody has any comments, you can always reach out to me. Please contact me if you want to weigh in on the story. I'm going to attempt to not have this be the whole story, the impeachment, or the whole show, I should say, of the impeachment inquiry, because we do have a couple other issues, even if I have to get to them quickly. So please, just stay right there. We will be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we're going to get a little time there where the microphone hadn't kicked on yet, so I thought I'd put that up on. I can't believe it. We just had an interview not that long ago about this spring book sale, but I know a lot of people really look forward to the book sale. So the Friends of the Southeast Steuben County Library is holding their fall book sale at the East Corning Fire Hall. That's coming up very soon. It's almost halfway through September. It's hard to believe, but Saturday, September 30th, you see all the times there. Is when it starts, going till October 7th. Cash or checks only. I want to highlight that just so you don't come unprepared. So I wanted to highlight our friends at the Friends of the Southeast Steuben County Library. All right, back to all the discussion this morning. Let me get that off the screen. Okay. And on CNN Out Front, correspondent Manu Raju suggests that McCarthy does not have the votes to impeach President Joe Biden. He simply does not. In fact, I've talked to a number of House Republicans who are saying that they want to see what this investigation actually bears out, whether they can actually prove some of these allegations, and that they're not willing to vote for actually charging the president with high crimes or misdemeanors, which is an incredibly high bar. Well, isn't that the goal in a way? I mean, I know that when it was Trump impeachment, it was okay to rush to judgment and it was a guilty till proven innocent. But even if he, who knows if he spoke to House Republicans, I'm not always the most confident in these anonymous sources. But let's say he did talk to a House Republican and they said, well, I want to see what this bears out. Let's do, that's what this is. It's an investigation. It's an inquiry. So let's see what happens. Innocent until proven guilty. Shouldn't that be supported? I know it was not that case. under the Trump administration. So it's just a little different. I think that's the right tactic to take. I don't want to go through. A number of Republicans told me that. Representative Jamie Raskins from Maryland, a Democrat, said on Anderson Cooper 360 that there's no evidence of treason, bribery, or high crimes and misdemeanors. There's no evidence of any crime at all by Joe Biden. So all this is clearly being driven by Donald Trump, who wants to establish this counterfeit moral equivalency between the two of them, just so he can say he's running against another impeached president. So it's really silly. Do you believe this is silly? I'm asking the question for you. You can contact me at any time. You see the number on the bottom of your screen. Do you believe this inquiry is silly? I will go back to the point that it was predictable that it would happen. I don't know if it's 100% predictable, but I did believe at some point it was going to happen. But do you believe it's silly that somehow Donald Trump is pulling the strings on this? But Dick Durbin, who was on CNN's The Lead, host Jake Tapper, every once in a while he comes out with a pretty good question. He says, "Are you comfortable with what Hunter Biden was doing? Obviously making money because his dad was, at the time, vice president. I mean, he didn't have any experience with Ukrainian gas companies." And this is what I mentioned earlier, and I think it is something that's overlooked because some of us know this story for so long, that what were his credentials to have these multi-million-dollar jobs? Is that not worth? And it goes back to the paintings. What kind of influencing was it? Is that what they were looking for, to have that input into the White House? Of course. And he was put on the board of Burisma. I don't know that he's not the first person to... Wait, what? I know that he's not the first person to cash in on a connection with a powerful father. But doesn't that make you uncomfortable? So Dick Durbin responds, yes, it does. And it does for Jared Kushner to have done the same thing under President Trump. We've got to establish some standards for members of families. I'm not saying that Hunter Biden broke the law or that there should be any punishment involved in it, but I don't feel good about the situation. If it looks like a son or daughter is capitalizing on the public achievement of their parents, yes, that does raise some questions in my mind. Now, on the other side of the coin, because we've been showing you kind of we'll wait till we come back from break. I've been showing you what the media and those on the left have to say. Let's take a look at, there's a couple pieces here just quickly, and then we are going to change the topic. A couple maybe more, I guess you could say, right-leaning opinions on the impeachment inquiry being opened yesterday. So let me take that break so we don't run too late. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox. We'll be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio located on Marcus Street in Corning. We're getting a lot of, 3 waves. Thank you to people sending in waves to that phone number or that are walking by. I always appreciate that. I also want to thank our guests, Charles and Shannon, for being on the program this morning from Culligan Water. They were part of the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program, so we really appreciate them taking the time out to tell us about Culligan Water. Okay. At the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, and there's really no reason to show you these articles because there's nothing but their headline, but time to stop Joe Biden's power play to protect himself and his family. This is Michael Goodwin. It's a very lengthy piece. But he said the decision by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden is drawing predictable howls from Democrats and their media handmaidens. Some faint-hearted Republican representatives also are whimpering, as if playing nice would help them keep their jobs. They should step away from the Kool-Aid. 2 things about that. He's right. It is interesting. I kind of remember going back at John McCain. I always thought was kind of the poster child for that. If I'm nice to the media, and this isn't to knock someone that has since passed, but it's just an example. If I'm nice to the media, they'll be nice to me. And as soon as he got the Republican nomination, remember they came up with that story, front page headlines about how he might have had an affair on his wife. It was just the most salacious story. Same thing with Romney. Remember they made a big deal about him. What was it? He put his dog on the roof of his car or something. I mean, you could play nice with them until they don't need you anymore. If you're bad-mouthing Republicans, they love you. They need you. If you're not, they don't need you anymore. And especially if you're trying to get into a position of power as a Republican, that's when you'll see them turn at the drop of a dime. I also, second part about that sentence, did you know, I did an interview with a survivor of Jonestown. Did you know that it wasn't actually Kool-Aid? You can tell your friends that interesting bit of information. It was actually Flavor Aid that was used. I didn't know either. The truth is that if McCarthy had opted against an inquiry, he wouldn't deserve to keep his job. This again, Michael Goodwin. And the GOP wouldn't deserve to hold the House majority. The role of the opposition party is to oppose, not surrender to the White House, especially a corrupt one. And it's long time past for Republicans to play hardball because it's the only game Democrats understand. That's true. That goes back to the argument that many people in the Republican Party make. Why do we play by a different set of rules? Whenever we get in power, we go, well, yes, Democrats did it that way, and it was really dirty at the time, but we're not going to play that same game because we're above that. And then they get back in power, and it's secular. The Post editorial board in general saying why opening a Biden impeachment inquiry is a no-brainer. For all the inevitable rage from the other side of the aisle, from the media, etc., it's a no-brainer. In 8 months, House GOP probes have proven that Joe was in close cahoots with Hunter's enterprises. He broke bread with Hunter's clients, jumped on calls with them, even wrote at least one college recommendation. I'm not going to go through this whole piece because I'm just wrapping up our discussion on this before we go to break. First, the American public needs to know what's in the 1,000 of alias emails Joe was then sending, as well as exactly where all the millions funneled through Hunter's dozens of shell companies came from and went to. Did Joe benefit directly, or was it just the rest of his family? Unravel, too, the collusion between social media companies between social media companies and high officials at the FBI and elsewhere to censor the Post when it began breaking the Hunter laptop stories. I wish they would get to the bottom of that. I don't know if they will, but that was really, well, very eye-opening of what we'd be dealing with the next 4 years. But to censor that story in the New York Post on social media is, I always thought, something that was not focused enough on, but the media, why would they, right? They were part of that censorship deal. Now, Andrew McCarthy says impeachment inquiry name doesn't mean much, but GOP is making progress against Biden. He's saying in just 8 months, they've significantly advanced public awareness of Biden's corruption. Let them continue their work. It would only undermine them for McCarthy to lose an impeachment inquiry vote or otherwise have to climb down from seeking one. It would be an unforced error and a coup for the undeserving Biden. Yeah, so that's why he didn't put it up for a vote. You could not have that unforced error. That might be worth the risk if there were some great benefit in an impeachment inquiry or some real chance of Biden's being convicted and removed. There's not. So that's McCarthy. We got plenty more to talk about, and we are wrapping up quickly, so we're going to go fast. So if you have any comments, get them in now. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. All right, we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We had just a couple seconds there where there'd be no audio, so I wanted to highlight that for September 23rd. We'll talk more about it as it nears, but that's the Strong Kids, Safe Kids returning to the Steuben County Fairgrounds, noon till 3. Look at all those fun activities, so mark your calendar. Noon to 3 on September 23rd. Okay, back to the stories. We're getting away from the impeachment inquiry. I did not mean to spend that much time on it. But I think it was necessary because I don't believe the media's coverage has been very fair into opening the inquiry. As we mentioned, you're going to see a lot of the same language used by media talking heads. So just be prepared, and that's why we're giving you all the information on both sides that I think is relevant to what we'll be dealing with in the near future. So Trump and Biden, they say both tumbled in an Iowa poll. It's interesting. The Hill is who released that, maybe being a little clickbait like by saying Trump, Biden both tumble in Iowa. And you click on it, poll. Okay. Former President Trump and President Biden both saw their support tumble in the early primary state of Iowa. An Emerson College poll of Iowa Republican caucus voters showed support for Trump currently sits at 49%, a drop from 62% in May. Meanwhile, a poll of Iowa Democrat caucus voters showed that Biden's support now sits at 50%, a drop from 69% back in May. And if you look at the actual numbers, I don't know if I can put them up on the screen or not. The Hill is a little bit obnoxious when it comes to that, but we will give it they do a fine enough job. It's just the way my setup is. Let's see if I can get that up on the screen so you can look at the numbers and I'm not just reading them, so you'll have a better idea. There you go. Ron DeSantis and Mike Pence's numbers also dropped for May. DeSantis went from 20 to 14, and Pence decreased from 5% to 3% support, even though the media, we're trying to, I'm not going to say hype him up, but they were suggesting that he was doing better because he wasn't spending anything but still doing better. Meanwhile, Ramaswamy and Tim Scott appear to be gaining some ground, both rising 5 points. Ramaswamy increased from 2% to 7%, and Scott from 3% to 8%. And Nikki Haley, who we know the media is really pushing, really going for, and Doug Burgum also saw slight raises of 2 points each. Again, I know I've mentioned this numerous times. I have no problem with Nikki Haley. It always just piques my interest when you have the media and maybe more of your moderate or liberal friends telling you that she could really do this thing, knowing full well they'll never vote for her ever. But I have to take another short break, and then we're done. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Let's go through a lot of topics quick, okay, because we only have a minute. I'm shocked by this, if I'm being honest, because I saw commercials that told me so different. But the U.S. incomes fall for third straight year. Surging inflation gobbled up household income gains last year, making 2022 the third straight year in which Americans saw their living standards eroded by rising prices and pandemic disruptions. This coming from the Wall Street Journal. But I thought, according to that commercial promoting Bidenomics, the economy is doing really good. And according to many in the media, the talking heads that seem to support Biden thoroughly, they seem to be telling us, never mind what's happening with your pay, never mind what's happening at the grocery store or at the gas pump, everything's great. You just don't quite understand. So that was shocking to me. That was very shocking. Also, I see, I really wanted to spend more time on this. You'll have to do the research yourself. It kind of made the news cycle yesterday. It's dying down. But you see that it's being alleged that the CIA tried to pay off analysts to bury their findings that COVID lab leak was likely. We know that they've been that opposition from really early on to suggest that it was a lab leak or to blame China in any way. That's because, I'm sure, follow the money, that would be the main reason. But now, if this is the case, a whistleblower saying that the CIA tried to pay off these people to bury the findings, that it was likely leaked from a lab, that's very troubling. I don't know if we'll ever get the answer to that, but that is really a groundbreaking whistleblower moment. Hopefully, we'll be able to give you more information on that as it unfolds. And we mentioned that $6 billion, some calling it ransom, $6 billion deal with Iran. Don't worry, the $6 billion are going to humanitarian efforts. We are told, and I wouldn't doubt otherwise, $6 billion to get those prisoners back the same day. They did it on September 11th, the same day that the Ayatollah Khomeini gave a speech celebrating America's demise, talking about the demise of the arrogant power of America, and that America is weakened and will become weaker. And again, all on September 11th. We are out of time. We were actually out of time a couple seconds ago. Thank you to our guests, Charles and Shannon from Culligan Water. We really appreciate them being on the program. Join us tomorrow. Former Congressman Joe Sempolinski will be our guest. Have a great day, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 with Frankly Speaking. I look forward to it already.